And if we can always have one person ahead of us to be able to say, it's all right,
I love to hear people's stories. And I think in that, the idea of going 20 plus years, I never get tired of hearing people's stories.
This is like why, I'm sitting here and I'm like, where's my notebook? I'm like, this is all so good.
Hey NWM Tribe, welcome back to Grow Together episode. I am with my co-host, Anna. Beautiful Anna, how are you doing?
I'm doing so well. How are you today?
Very good. Hey, last episode in our Grow Together, we talked about the importance of emotional well-being for pastors and how we don't often talk about this kind of dark side of ministry, but today I'm super excited because it's almost like a sequel. Last month we talked about the danger and the importance of acknowledging mental health, and today we're going to learn from those who actually handled it really well, and then learn how do we do this long-term ministry, because ministry is hard as it is, but to do it for long-term. I think I heard a statistics that they say nowadays pastors, if you last 3 years, that's a pretty good sign. That's a high turnover, don't you think?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. When you think about 3 years, I've heard that statistic many times too, is that an average pastor lasts about 3 years. And if you reach that 5-year mark, that is a significant marker if you're going to do this long haul. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, here I am now. What year is it? Okay, 22. So I've been in ministry for 7 years. And I'm like, wow, I'm already past that mark. But I still feel like I'm just in the beginning of it. And so just as I'm continuing on my journey of ministry, I'm longing more and more to hear from leaders who have stood the test of time, who have made it past that 3-year mark, 7-year mark, 10-year, 15 years. And then ultimately, I love being around leaders who've been in ministry for 20 plus years and that they're thriving and that they've stood, just like what you said, Saehee, they've stood the test of what ministry can be, which can be some really hard and challenging, and to borrow your word, those dark times. And so that's one thing that I'm really hungry for more of in this season of my ministry than ever before.
Yeah. And as you guys know, this Grow Together is really geared toward under 40 ministers, because we understand that there's a unique needs and challenges and victories in this group of people who say yes to the ministerial calling. But it's important for us to learn and have a peer to talk from our seasoned ministers as well. So as you are going into this conversation for today, just keep in mind that you're not alone. And then we get to grow together by learning from others. So Anna, let's go ahead and invite our guests. And who do we have today?
So I'm so honored to have these two women on today. I hold them both in very high esteem. They have both served as personal mentors of mine, which has been such a gift. Lori Warning, she was a mentor of mine early in college when I was still trying to navigate, is pastoral ministry, preaching, what does that all look like? And she breathed a lot of life into me. And she was actually my very first the very first time I was on staff at a church, she was my very first boss. She hired me. She called me up and she's like, I think you should do this. So anyways, that's a whole nother story, I guess, for another day. And then Lisa Clements, she is another woman that I just believe in, and she has believed in me and has been such an encouragement. Each of these women have served in pastoral and church ministry for 20 plus years. With that, they both walk in such wisdom and strength and resolve, and their character is through the ceiling. These women can preach and they can teach and they can, hold the attention of many people. But really what sets them apart is that they are women of strong character and abiding in Jesus. So I'm so excited to have Lisa and Lori on our conversation today.
All right. Welcome, Pastor Lori, Pastor Lisa.
So just a little bit about these phenomenal women. So Lisa Clements, she is the lead pastor of North Dallas Assembly in Dallas, Texas. So it is a church plant that she has been pioneering, which is incredible. She also serves as the elected presbyter for her section in the North Texas district, which is another amazing thing. This May, she is going to be graduating with her doctorate in ministry at AGTS. And then she's been married to her husband, Eric, for over 30 years. And yes, she has been in full-time ministry for 20 plus years. And then we have Lori Warning. Lori and her husband have been in, again, pastoral ministry for over 20 years. Lori has served on staff at Megachurch as the director of assimilation. She has been children's pastor. She's served in many different roles. And in December of 2018, she became the girls ministries director for the Assemblies of God. However, she's taking on a new role in the coming weeks with our Assemblies of God Leadership and Resource Center as the leadership training and events development director. So I'm so excited for her. And both of these ladies are just literally through the ceiling, amazing women of God.
Wow, that introduction on alone is mouthful.
I know. I'm like,
amazing.
these are like the heroes of my life. And I'm like, how
Right.
can I like make sure people know these are like the women that I want to be and emulate my life after?
My goodness, Pastor Lori and Pastor Lisa, thank you for joining us today. I know 20 plus years sounds like, you look back and already been 20 plus years, right? So, but it doesn't, it's okay because you guys started when you're 10. So it kind of makes sense. You're still in a good season of ministry life, right? But let's just get back to the first question. Actually, how old were you when you first called to ministry? I think it's important for us to understand, when we look at women like you two, I was like, wow, 20 plus years. That sounds amazing. But we also have to remember there is a distinct moment when God called you to ministry, and you have to keep going back to that moment whenever there's challenges, right? So what are those moments? Pastor Lisa and then Pastor Lori.
I remember distinctly at a Sunday night altar when I was 16. It was, I was slain in the spirit all by myself. It wasn't like a tap them on the head, make them fall service. I just remember waking up and the call was hard upon me, and I didn't know what to do with it because I'd never seen a woman in leadership in the church. Outside of the church I had, but never in the church. But that was the initial call.
Wow. And you remember that. That's pretty important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Pastor Lori.
Oh, yeah. I was in between the summer between my 8th grade and freshman year of high school. I had just come back to the Lord that end of that school year that spring, and got invited to go to the Iowa District Youth Camp. That was my home district up in Iowa. Sam Reifkogel was our camp speaker. It was a phenomenal week. And I remember it was the last night of that last Thursday night service that we all know at camp. And I can take you to that place in the auditorium at the campgrounds. I can, it was so embedded into my memory. But it was just this moment in prayer, and just this, probably for the first time, this real surrender of just like, God, I don't know what following you looks like, but I'm all in, I'm on, let's do this. And I just remember that idea of seeing myself on a platform, seeing myself with people, and just knowing, okay, God, I surrender. This is all you. And just knowing that call became so real in my life in a matter of weeks, because then I had leaders in my life, youth leaders, who poured into me and said, hey, we think you could get up here and do the announcements. Hey, could you go pray for that person? And they saw what God was doing in my life and began to give me opportunities. And so it just, that confirmation of that calling continued to grow.
So good.
Good.
Yeah.
So here you guys like experience this like formal, like clear direction from the Lord at really young ages. Like Lisa, you at 16, Lori, here you were like 13, 14 years old. And the Lord is impressing these things on you. And now here you are, like currently, you've walked through a lot of life since then. So you graduated high school. Lori, you went to CBC. Lisa, you went to Evangel. You eventually got married. You had children. You've moved around different states, different churches, different ministries. That is a lot of different seasons. And so in a moment or a season where it was really difficult, which I'm sure knowing you guys, and just getting to know some of your stories, there was really challenging seasons that you faced. And in those seasons where it was really challenging and you legitimately wanted to quit ministry, you were like, okay, like I'm not the 14-year-old girl anymore. I'm not the 16-year-old girl anymore. Like this is real life. Like I'm trying to navigate this with my family or like a personal situation. How have you stayed committed? What has helped you stay committed in spite of all the different seasons and all the different changes that you faced?
Yeah. I thought about this a little bit because each challenge brought a different reason I stayed committed, if that makes sense. As I faced a couple of really big challenges in the last 10 years that were some of the board members even ask at the last church is that, why did you stay? And it was a point where I had to dial in so hard to Jesus, and he asked me to stay. And I know that sounds very woohoo, but he told me to stand still, and I'm not very good at standing still anyway. And then the other thing that the Lord has always made me aware of is I have 2 children watching everything I'm doing. And both of them early on, I felt were headed into ministry. So I wanted them to see clearly navigating some of those things, trying to think of it in how it would be received and perceived by my children. And it kind of guided how I navigated some of that, not hiding that it was hard, because I didn't want them to go into ministry that it wasn't hard, but I wanted to stay so close to the Lord and not get angry at the Lord as I navigated some of the difficulties. And both of my kids are in ministry now, and they've already at a young age navigated some really, I mean, we've all been through some really hard stuff if you're in ministry, and seeing them be able to navigate it with this is about Jesus, not about them. That's why I tried. I wasn't always successful, but just trying to do my best to stay anchored in Jesus. I didn't have a lot of outside mentors for a long time, so all I had was Jesus. So I didn't get real disappointed in when people let me down. I kind of expected it. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
yeah, absolutely. What about for you, Lori?
Yeah, it was funny. My husband and I were talking through this the other night as well. And it was interesting. Those places in our lives where I went to were not the same places he went to. And so just the perspective was interesting. But the one time early on in ministry, so I started in ministry at 23, and within the next 2 to 3 years got married. And then we had our first child. And especially for our younger sisters, being full-time in ministry and having children, going through a pregnancy, going through the birth of a child, it will mess with you in unique ways. And my oldest son, I gave birth on a Wednesday night. No lie, my brother-in-law stood in the foyer of the church on the phone and giving updates throughout the message on Wednesday night. So the church, it's like the congregation was enjoying the birth of our first child with us. And I came home on Saturday morning, and I walked through the doors on Sunday morning because it was kids' church time. And so that was just a unique season. But about 3 months into that, I didn't have the wherewithal to say, I need to have some of my older sisters, those who have been there, done that, to surround me and direct me. And I didn't have that. And so about 3 months after I'd given birth to our oldest son, and literally did not skip a beat in full-time ministry, still had a husband, still had to put dinner on the table, still had to keep the house, all those things. I didn't understand that I was at a place where I was exhausted. I was emotional. I wasn't making rational decisions or responding appropriately to situations and circumstances. And if you've ever given birth to a child, all of those things are just realities that come with life. And instead of having the understanding of sitting down with my pastor, who was very compassionate, but I didn't know how to have that conversation with him. So instead, I resigned and I quit my job. And he pushed me to stay. And I said, I'm sorry. I don't think this is what God's called. I have to be a mom. And I didn't know how to do all of it well. And I didn't understand the understanding that balance in ministry is really, I just heard someone explain this the other day. I'm like, that was so smart. This pendulum of swinging. Balance in ministry, there's going to be times where things are going to ebb and flow, and understanding the Sabbath was so critical. And I didn't know that yet. I hadn't learned that yet. But less than a week later, we immediately went down to one income. We had a brand new baby, and the overwhelmingness of all that, on top of the fact that I had just left ministry, there was just all that and more. Anyway, a week later, my pastor and his wife showed up at our door, and groceries in hand, because they knew that there was going to be a financial burden. And they stayed for about 45 minutes. We had a wonderful conversation. They held the baby, and they walked out the door. And when I shut the door, it was like this, it was like this traditional movie scene. It was stupid. But I remember leaving my hand on the door and just beginning to sob, because in my mind, what represented with them walking out the door was what I knew was my calling, and I didn't know how to balance it. And literally still standing there, hand on the door, there was a knock at the door, and I opened the door. It was my pastor, and he said, "I'm sorry, there's just one more thing. Are you ready to come back to work?"
Wow.
And I was like, "Yes, I don't know how to do it, but I need to be that, whatever, just that." And it was so great, because in that season, that's when my pastor's wife came alongside me in a new way. I began to reach out to older moms in the congregation who were friends of mine, and said, how do you just do life? How do you balance? And I will say, in a matter of weeks, we actually ended up getting involved in a Bible study that was a parenting class that was biblically based. There's some wonderful resources out there. But those are realities. And those were times, I could tell you a lot of times where people hurt me, where leadership offended me, my choice to be offended, all those kind of things. And you have to make that choice, Lisa, like you spoke so well. There's people watching us, and it's never about us. It's always about Christ and turning everything to his attention. So, but yeah, that was a situation. My husband said, "Don't you remember that?" And that wasn't the top thing in my mind, but it was a big issue in our life. It was a big time. But I learned so much in that season, of that, number one, my relationship with Christ. Number two, my relationship with my husband, because that was the best example we had to others in our lives of the love of Christ. And then to my children. And through all of that, ministry was who we were. It was our calling, and it oozed out of all of those things. But if I ever inverted it and put ministry before any of those things, and especially my relationship with Christ, things were absolutely going to be out of whack. So,
wow. See, this is like why, like, I'm like sitting here and I'm like, where's my notebook? I'm like, this is all so good. And I love both of your guys' vulnerability. Like, thank you for like sharing so openly and freely with us. Like, that means so much. So
yeah,
I would love to hear just like what has kept your, like, in the midst of that. So you guys, I love hearing like the parenting and all of that. So what has kept your passion for people and ministry fresh?
For me, it ebbs and flows. In different seasons, it's been different things. My husband is not in ministry, 100% supports me, always has. And that has kept my ministry fresh, because it's not all encompassing for us. There's a break when I'm at home. We're not, it is all encompassing, but it's not. I am, some would say, type A, and all charging, do everything all the time. And I have to come back. And of course, it's the Lord. Of course, it's all that. But it took me a long time to find out what recharged me. And I like to say I'm an ambivert. I need the extrovert. I need the introvert. But most of all, I'm really a loner. I have been my whole life. I will go shopping by myself. I don't mind eating in a restaurant by myself. In fact, I prefer by myself a lot of times. And so being able to carve out that time, even in the midst of family busyness or whatever, my escape, and what I have found I have to plan time for, is I like to read. I like to escape into a novel, or I read a lot of historical biographies or historical fiction, but I'm not one who can read like a chapter or whatever. I'm a pretty quick reader. And I read, I started to say a certain novel's name, and I'm like, I don't know who's listening, but it wasn't anything racy. I don't read that, but it was a book my kids were reading, a really thick one that is celebrating its anniversary this year. And I want to sit down and I want to read it from start to finish. And if that takes me 12 hours, I want to do that. And my family and I have realized that's what recharges me. So, right now I'm in the middle. I just handed all my doctoral work in. It's off my plate. I'm done. And I've read like 4 books in the last week or so and I realized this is how I recharge. I just want to escape into the world of somebody else's, whether they lived historically or whatever. But there's people who are like, I want to go walk by the lake, or I want to take a personal retreat, or I want to do this. And when my kids were young, my husband would go, Mom's reading today. And they knew that meant I'm reading. If it's a 900-page novel, start to finish, I'm just reading. But I needed that place to escape into and enjoy. So finding out what is it, if it's something weird like that, or if you like to bake, or you want to go shopping, or a new pair of shoes solves everybody's problems. And
amen.
But finding that thing. And sometimes I think as female ministers, we want to always make the answer Jesus, which it is. And of course I want to have that devotional time, and I need that quiet time. And but sometimes when I would listen to people speak, I wanted to go, I know it's Jesus, but sometimes I need the squirrel answer. You know what I'm saying? What's that thing that you do that, and for me, as I was thinking about that question, I thought, that's what I do, and it's my quirky thing. And I get really peeved if people interrupt and this morning, my husband is changing jobs, and so this week he's off. And this morning I was sitting down, I'm like, I'm finishing this book today. I was reading, and he goes, well, I was thinking we could start this project. And I said, Eric, I'm finishing my book. And he goes, okay, I'm out. Because he knew I've been reading this book for 3 days, and it's about to kill me. So I need to finish it.
I love it that, the Bible says that everything is spiritual. And so, you don't have to make everything like wholly spiritual. We need to know that, I said amen to you buying a new shoes. Yeah, come on. That's a spiritual thing. What I'm saying is it's okay for us. I think sometimes we guilt ourselves as ministers, like if you do something that is like non-spiritual, to relax and to regroup and find something that we are passionate about, somehow we're less than. I don't think that's true, right? And so I would love to hear from Lori as well before we ask you the final question.
Yeah, I think I love what you said, Lisa. You said a word in there, a combination of introvert, extrovert, and I totally get
ambivert,
it. Yeah. I've never done the Enneagram, which I probably need to. I'm so far behind.
I haven't either. I don't have that much brain capacity right now.
Thank you. I thought I was the only one in America.
No.
But I would have these. I'll have some young people come to me and go, oh my goodness, we've got you pegged. You're I don't even know the numbers. You're a 7, wing 4. And I'm like, the only wing I have is what's under here when I flap my arms. So I'm like, I don't get it, but I'm like, I bet you're wrong. But on all of those personality profiles, which I'm kind of a geek about a lot of those things. I love personalities and understanding people, but I'm usually one of those like crosshair middle people that.
Me too.
I love people until I don't love them. No, that sounds horrible, but I'll never forget. That's what before we even started recording, Anna, we were talking about that. Understanding who you are makes everything we do in whose we are so much more effective. I remember first, when I first got started in ministry, you look at how people present. Joyce Myers was so big on the scene in the early 90s when I first got into ministry, and you saw how she came across, and then you watch other ministers and you think, man, I had to learn early on. I only know how to do this one way because I knew I was never going to be fake. I don't like fake. And so you either get me or you don't get, whatever. You can mute the mic. But in all that, I had to learn that, like you, Lisa, I love being with people. That energizes me to a point. And then I'm a strategic thinker, and I feel like I become more effective when I have time in my office, or I have days where I get to do strategic planning for the next 6 months. And to me, it makes my public ministry, my face-to-face ministry, whatever that looks like, whatever stage that happens to be, whether that's in a restaurant having coffee with somebody, or it's on a platform, or it's in a small group setting, I'm energized then by interacting with people. I love to hear people's stories. And I think it's in that, the idea of going 20 plus years, I never get tired of hearing people's stories. And it's in hearing the stories of other. Lisa, I'm sitting like, my goodness, I want to sit down and have coffee with you.
That's what I was just thinking.
And so even just this weekend was at church. I met a new lady, and I'm like, no, let's make a date. Let's go have coffee next week. I want to hear your story. And I'm not, if I have a choice to be on a platform in front of 5,000 or in a room with 2, put me on the platform any day. But when you have those God divine moments, when you get to sit down with somebody else and you hear their story, that energizes me to no end. And that makes me want to be who God has called me to be even better, because it's through those stories and those testimonies of people who talk about everything God has done in their life. And I want to be a part of somebody else's story. I want to be a part of seeing God move miraculously in the hearts of those who were this and now they were that amazing grace story. So I recharge by getting alone, by taking a nap, by snuggling with my husband. We bought a sectional a year ago, and it was so that we could have 2 recliners together, because we're nerds and we like to still snuggle after almost 24 years of marriage. And, that recharges me. But in ministry, when I get to hear the stories of others, it encourages me that God's not done. As long as we wake up breathing in and out, there's still work to be done. And I want to be a part of that big God story in whoever's lives that I can be.
That's good. To keep that fire going, I think what I'm hearing is that we need each other, whether it is your spouse, friends, and also knowing that in different seasons, different things fill you up, right? Different things keep your passion going. So it could be the reading books right now, but it could be something else, right? And so just different seasons. Our audience, under 40 or over 40, some people are single, not married, but they have different passions right now that fill you in. Some people, you're in a retired season. What fills you in is that you want to hang out with grandkids, right? So many different things. So find what works for you and do that, because that's part of us growing together. Here's my final question to you, for both of you. So 20 plus years of ministry is important. We want to say yes to God all the way. But what is the biggest threat that you see in this generation and the next generation coming? What are some things that we need to be aware of so we can be proactive in going around it and just be stronger? So Pastor Lori and then Lisa.
Wow. A couple things come to mind. First of all, no matter how old we are, what season of life we're in, God calls people in different seasons of their lives to new ministries. And so I think it's really important for all of us, as we are interacting with others, seeing in others what they may not see in themselves. As that 13, 14-year-old, hearing that call of God, I am completely convinced that children younger than that can receive a call of God on their life, but they have to have that opportunity. And then they have to have those people who are pouring into them and fostering that call. I think we can all say, Anna, it's an honor to be considered a mentor in your life. I have a list of mentors. It's those people pouring into our lives that keep us going, that continue to feed that calling. And that calling doesn't have to be pulpit church ministry. That calling could be living out our lives, our testimony. In my favorite store, Walmart, I don't know if I can say that, but whether we're, one of my favorite testimonies of a God moment was I'm standing in line at Dollar General, my second favorite store, and the guy in front of me is buying kitty litter, and it created this conversation that led to God. But it's people pouring into my life that keep me going. And I think in every season of our lives, there's that opportunity for us to see something in others, whether it's, people who are in their later seasons of life who may not feel as needed. There is a place for everyone. For those of you that are young, maybe still in college or even in high school, God has a purpose and plan. I just came off of recently an amazing event where I got to share about how each and every one of us were created on purpose and for a purpose. It's a personal passion of mine that everybody has a calling to be lived out in their life, whether inside the church, outside the church. We've all been called to serve outside the church, but I think just each of us seeing that in others, calling it out and encouraging in others. It's how we can keep this thing going.
So good.
So perhaps the biggest threat is that we're just so busy with our own lives. We don't see each other's calling. We don't have time for calling out that calling and affirming that. And so maybe to slow down is a one way of doing away from that. Yeah.
Now,
how about you, Pastor Lisa?
So inward in our focus.
Right.
Yeah, I echo what Lori is saying, because I think it's important. So you asked what's the biggest threat. I think it's thinking we've arrived or we have a platform, because in today's society, when Lori and I started out, there was no social media. You got in, you scrub. I do a talk at the college called "Sometimes You Just Have to Glove Up and Clean the Toilet," and it doesn't matter where you are in ministry. Sometimes you have to clean up the poop. And as women, we've probably cleaned a little more than other people. And I'm sorry if that's too frank, but I think sometimes our threat to ministry is we want to be in the green room all the time. We want to be, I'm the keynote speaker, or I'm this, and or feeling I deserve something. Yeah. And people sense that. And if we can always have one person ahead of us, when I was parenting, I tried to always have a person a little farther ahead in the parenting game than me, to be able to say, it's all right. Other things can happen, or that kind of grounding place. But where I have seen, as I've spoken to some of our undergraduates and different things, is this: I already know what I'm doing. I've had some of our young undergraduates, most of them have been male, sit down and try and talk to me about how I should really be doing ministry. And I try and be gracious. There are times when I haven't been, but it's that like I've already arrived, I already know, and we've all met those people. But to maybe have others around you, and I'll end with this. I had a mentor when I taught a class at our church in Kansas City. I had a pretty large Sunday morning class I taught. And one of my mentors, one morning I taught, and I was like, that was just straight up good. And I had, we've all had that moment where you're like, and I had people coming up and going, that lesson was so good today. I took so many notes. And when everybody left, my mentor was sitting there and she goes, you did really well in your own strength. There was no God in that. And even though it was a Bible lesson, and it made me go, what am I doing in my own strength? What am I trying to, I'm like Lori, I'm a grandma of 6. I'm a little pudgy around the middle. You just get me. There's no more whatever. I like a lot of makeup. I wear a lot of shoes, but that's who I am. And I wish I had learned early on not to keep trying to, or feel like I deserve something or people owe me something, that I can always stay willing to glean and glove up and do the hard work.
That's good. That's good.
So good. So good. I appreciate both of you so incredibly much. I appreciate your investment in me, and also the women who are going to be listening to this. You both are, I love your vulnerability. I love your authenticity. And there's all this like data out there that like my generation and the generation behind me, Gen Z, that what we want is authenticity and vulnerability. And what is so amazing is that you two have offered that long before it was like demanded. And so just love you both and so thankful for you guys and so encouraged. And I can't wait to like sit down and take more notes about what you all just shared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for your wisdom. We have this years of ministry ahead of us, not just us in this, conversation, but those that are watching too. So I love it. Yes, let's die to our sense of entitlement. Let's die to our ego, right? Let's die to like, I got it together. We just need each other, right? That's how we grow together. So thank you, my friends and NWM Tribe, for joining our conversation. We're here for you. And until every woman fulfills her ministerial calling, we are here for you. We're doing this together. We're better together, guys. All right, God bless you. And we'll come back with more conversation next month. Stay on social media and follow us at AG Women Ministers. We'll see you next time. God bless.
Hey friends, we are just popping on really quickly to tell you about an exciting event that we have coming up on Tuesday, April 19th at 7 p.m. Central. And it's going to be taking place on Facebook and YouTube. And this amazing group of women that I'm sitting beside right now, or digitally sitting beside, we are going to be sharing about a topic that is relevant and interesting for you as a female minister, and particularly female ministers under 40. And we would love for you to be there and to be a part. Last time that we did this, we had so much fun, had a lot of laughs, and grew together. And we know that's going to be the case for this next one. So we cannot wait to see you there. Invite your friends, and we're excited.
Yes, we're going to be live. Share your ideas, and we look forward to seeing you guys.